In episode 3, we'll start out with what's going on inside of Lumen. Now that the group has hall passes, they're able to go around the building when they want to, which will make it a lot easier to find Miss Casey. Using an Irving sketch of Miss Casey, they print out a bunch of flyers that say missing, and they're planning on breaking up into groups, with Mark and Helly going to find the goat people, Irving going to his old stomping ground of O&D, which he's not all that comfortable about just because Bert isn't there. And while they want Dylan to go check out the new break room, he's in work mode because of his incentive on meeting his Audi's family. It's not like he doesn't want to help, but he kind of brushes them aside and says, I'll try to do it later. So for the moment, it's really just going to be Irving, Helly, and Mark. Helly and Mark take off because it's going to be difficult for them to find the goat people. Irving, however, stops at Dylan's desk and he tells him that he's recreated the painting that his Audi just kept painting over and over again of that hallway. He asks Dylan if he wants to go help him try to find it because he figures that it's probably in the building, but Dylan once again makes up an excuse. He tells him, no, you go by yourself. And then their conversation gets broken up by Mrs. Wong, who's actually shown up to reward Dylan for his hard work. While Irving, Mark, and Helly are after Miss Casey, Dylan gets taken to the new room and he gets to meet his Audi's wife. The room is really nice. It takes Dylan completely off guard because there's just a bunch of family photos of people that he doesn't know, but he knows that they're technically his family. Mrs. Wong then introduces him to his Audi's wife, Gretchen, and she tells him that through good behavior, he's earned an 18-minute visit. The interaction is a little awkward, especially when some questions arise like, hey, who is that child? And Miss Wong chimes into the intercom system and says Miss Wong because she's listening to the whole thing. She's making sure they're not discussing things they're not supposed to. But Gretchen is able to tell Dylan about his Audi, and through this, Dylan gets a sense of who he really is. As for Irving, he heads on over to O&D, and he does at least see a familiar face. It's Felicia, Bert's old coworker who he was really close with. She's relieved to see Irving. She gives him a big hug when she sees him. And even though that Irving is technically there to try to find Miss Casey, what this ends up being is the two talking about Bert. One thing Felicia says is, I never saw him nervous until one day he worked on his hair for 2 hours, and that day was because he knew he was going to see you. Because the feeling is so mutual, Irving whips out his sketchbook and he shows her that he drew Bert every single day that he didn't see him. He didn't care that his numbers struggled. But as Felicia flips through the sketchbook, she sees the latest sketch, which is the recreation of Irving's Audi's painting, and she recognizes it. She says, that's the exports hall. We send a lot of shipments there. We used to go ourselves, but now they send a guy. Irving asks her, do you remember where it is? Because now he has his first lead. And then finally, over with Mark and Helly, they're able to find the goat room, but there's no goats. They do notice, though, that there is a tunnel, and they decide to crawl through that, and they find an entire room with a field. Goats all over the place. I mean, they've never seen this room before. They didn't even know it existed. And then a woman emerges who seems to run the place. Her name's Lorne. She looks very disheveled, very dirty, and she asks one simple question, are you here to kill me? Which throws Mark and Helly completely by surprise. They say, no, we're from Macro Redate Refinement. We're looking for somebody. Lorne, though, doesn't seem like she really wants to talk, and Mark and Helly continue to press on, saying, look, we don't mean you any harm. We just want to ask you a few questions. That's it. Lorne decides to give in, and she leads them over to her desk. She looks at the photo of Miss Casey, and it's clear that she does, in fact, recognize this woman, but she tells Mark and Helly, no, I don't know her. Lorne tries to kick both Mark and Helly out, telling him, look, just take the paper and go. But Mark doesn't want to go, because he can tell that Lorne knows something. So to speed things up, Lorne grabs a cowbell and starts using it. And this summons all the goats and all the workers in the area. And these workers, they don't seem normal. I mean, the one guy looks like he was busy on January 6th, if you know what I mean. They surround both Helly and Mark, and while they are both intimidated, they press on. Helly grabs the sketch of Miss Casey and she starts showing the workers, do you know this woman? But as Helly is explaining who Miss Casey is, Lorne is saying, you guys got to stop this now. Lorne gets so upset that she stops Helly and says, we sent a courier to inform Mr. Milchick about your inquiry. To which Mark immediately says, no, you guys can't do that. They could kill her if they find out we're looking for her. Lauren screams, that's not a mammalian's problem, because I guess in this section they consider themselves something called mammalian. And Mark tells her, listen, we used to be scared of different departments too, but they just disappeared her. And if we let this happen to Miss Casey, then who's going to stop them when it happens to us? I mean, if one of your goats went missing, wouldn't you go look for it? That seems to get through to Lauren. She tells Mark that Miss Casey used to come and do her sessions in their husbandry tank. She also adds that Miss Casey had a gentle way about her. And then another one of the workers tells them that Miss Casey told him his Audi excels at stargazing. And that meant a lot to him. Lauren cuts back in and tells Mark and Helly that as far as they know, Miss Casey was in fact retired. But if they think something else happened, the mammalians won't get in their way. Mark and Helly really appreciate this, and they're about to head out, but Lauren says, hey, before you go, can we see your bellies? Because there was that rumor that people from MDR had pouches to eat with, but Helly and Mark can put that rumor to bed. Now, as for what's going on the quote-unquote outside of Lumen, Milchick arrives in his office, and he's surprised because Natalie is there waiting for him. But it's not just Natalie, it's the board as well. They're able to hear what Milchick says through the speaker, but everything that they say is being relayed to Natalie so she can end up telling Milchick. It's weird. Natalie says, the board is thrilled at your ascension. They want to make sure you feel appreciated and want to know if you do, in fact, feel appreciated. To which Milchick says, I do. Natalie then tells him that the board wants him to feel connected to Lumen's history. To that end, the board is gracing him with a gift. They're re-canonicalized paintings. The paintings are all well-known paintings that Lumen employees have seen of the founder of Lumen, Kier. Well, when Milchick opens it up, it's as if he and Kier had a baby. I mean, it looks like Milchick has kind of replaced Kier. The paintings are bizarre. Milchick, however, is stunned, and it seems like stunned in a good way. Natalie tells him that she received the same gift when she got promoted. However, before he leaves for the day, he does put the paintings away, and he seems to put them in storage, but he makes sure they're in a safe space. While the paintings are safe, his job might not be. After some time, Miss Cobell decided to drive back to the Lumen campus, wait in the parking lot for Helen to walk out. And when Helen sees her, she walked up to her to have a conversation. Cobell tells her, if you want me back, you have to accommodate my demands. The first one is that MDR is hers. It's non-negotiable. She adds that Mark S. is so close to completing Cold Harbor, and she intends to finish what she started, which is why Milchick has got to go. Helen, though, doesn't seem to agree. She thinks that Miss Cobell is being a little egotistical, overestimating her contributions to everything. She reminds her that they didn't have to ask her back, to which Miss Cobell says, you didn't have a choice. Helen invites Miss Cobell inside so they can continue to talk about this. She calls up Natalie and asks, can you see if the board is available? Miss Cobell seems to agree to it, and she starts walking towards the building with Helen. But before she gets inside, something spooks her, and she turns around and walks back to her car, fleeing the parking lot in a very, very rushed manner. As for Natalie, when she received that phone call, she was leaving Devin and Rickens. She had stopped by to talk to Rickon because his book, The You Are, was a big hit on the floor. She wanted to know if he could adapt it specifically for innies. And while Rickon's excited about it, Devin's like, what's wrong with the original version? And Natalie says, nothing. There's just a certain verbiage to which innies respond more favorably to. If we just tweak it here and there, we think it could be a real game changer. Yet none of that really makes a whole lot of sense to Devin, and honestly, she doesn't really care because she has to head over to Mark's place. They've got a kind of secret mission they're doing. Mark realizes that he has to get a message to his innie. His latest brilliant idea is burning a message into his retinas. He's been able to figure out how long he has to do this for before he actually goes down in the elevator. They haven't really thought this plan out too much, but Devin has agreed to help. And while they work on a contraption to make this happen, Devin tells Mark all about the You Are and the any version that they're planning on doing. After working on it for a little bit, Mark decides to test it out in his car. But while he's trying to see exactly how long the image is burned, he gets startled because Sal Regavi, the woman who was able to, quote, free Petey from his innie, was standing outside of the car. And she asks him, "You're really not doing what I think you're doing, right? You're not trying to burn a message into your retina. I mean, did you even think this through? How is your innie going to get a message back to you?" She tells Mark that she heard about the OTC. And Mark says, "Yeah, my sister had a whole conversation with my innie." To which she asks, "Did he mention how your wife is alive by any chance?" And that stuns Mark. He initially asks, "Who told you that?" But then he just goes, "Is she?" And Saul tells him, "She was the last time I saw her." Mark is so stunned by this, he has to get out of the car just to get some air. He asks Saul, "How could you not tell me?" But she says, "We were interrupted, if you remember. Mark, I want to help you, but you have to trust me. There's only one way to get information in and out of Lumen, and that's reintegration. I'm better at it now. I can make it work now." All Mark cares about is seeing his wife. So he says, "All right, yeah, let's do it." Saul ends up taking him to her workshop, hooking him up, asking him a bunch of questions, changing frequencies. But all of a sudden, the wavelengths in his brain click, and suddenly he remembers waking up on that table, just like Helly did. Only it's Petey who's saying, "I wonder if you'd mind taking a brief survey. To start out, who are you?" Thank you so much for checking out this recap. Please consider subscribing to the channel and subscribing to my Patreon. Hit thumbs up if you liked it. Smash that thumbs down button if you thought it sucked. If you left a comment, I don't get back to you. I usually don't check the comments unless they're like a super comment. Also, if you don't see the next video up on the end screen, not to worry, it'll be up in a day or two.